All right. I believe we are ready. We are live. We are going. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about this concept of getting to a place where we no longer care what other people think about us. And this is something that I think a lot of us deal with and struggle with and find a difficult time finding a balance with, because in real reality, there is no one answer to whether or not we should care what other people think about us. All right? And understanding that there is nuance and there is complexity to the answer to this question can help us to first stop thinking that there's some sort of like black and white, everyone should feel this way, everyone should get to this one place, there's a right way to be kind of quest that a lot of us can be on when we're in this life path and doing what we're doing. And one second. And understanding that getting to a place where we understand what is best for ourselves, where we need to be at any given time and in any given place in order to be living a healthy life, in order to be living a life where we have, good social connections, where we are feeling aligned with ourselves and we're feeling connected to what we want to be doing and we're feeling good about that. And also that we are understanding that we are individuals who live within the context of a culture, of a family, of a society, of a workplace, and that we are not just living our ultra individualistic, all by myself life, while simultaneously understanding that we are not children who are dependent upon approval and dependent upon the whole world outside of us believing in what we're doing and saying that what we're doing is right and good in order to be knowing if what we're doing is right and good is the key, right? So we, again, can't say that everyone should get to a place where you no longer care what anyone thinks about you, because that is totally unrealistic in the reality that we live in, where we are beings who live within the context of a community. Okay? So, should we get to a place where we no longer care at all what anyone thinks of us? I think, generally speaking, the answer is no. We don't want to get to a place where we don't care at all, ever, what anyone thinks of us. Rather, we want to get to a place where we can take the opinions of people who matter, that we can discern the difference between when we really should care what someone is saying about our behavior, about our way of being, about the things that we're doing, about the things that we're saying. And when and where we can say, look, this is an opinion that doesn't actually matter, or something that I can brush off, okay? And understanding too that for a lot of us, especially those of us who are in the spirituality, self-help, personal growth world, a lot of us are coming from a bend of being a little bit too dependent on people's opinions and people's view of us, and feeling like we need to measure up and be approved of and be loved in order to be safe, in order to be doing the right thing, in order to be good. And many of us have lost or struggle to connect with our inner compass and our sense of inner guidance because we're so external. Okay, so when we're in that situation, when we're in a situation where so much of our focus and so much of what we believe to be true and our opinion of ourselves and our opinion of what is right and good and bad and what works and what doesn't is so external, to the point that it is detrimental to us, then it can be a good thing to learn to care less about what other people think about us and what other people think in general. And I will talk about how we can do that, the steps that we can start to take in order to start to care less. So again, it's about caring less, but replacing the care that we are placing right now on the opinions of others with caring about what reality says. Okay, so we're not just, I don't care, right? Because then we can feel like, okay, so then what do I care about? How am I supposed to make decisions? How am I supposed to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing in life? How do I know when I'm doing the right thing or when I'm doing the wrong thing? How do I know if I'm causing harm? We're going to get into why we care, right, about what other people think about us and why this is even a topic to discuss. So for some of us, we do need to move away from that a little bit. For some people, that is not what they need to be doing, right? Some people are in a state where they are not caring enough about how their behaviors and their way of life and the things that they do and the things that they say impact and affect others. And they are not caring enough about what other people think, to the point that it is detrimental to themselves and it is detrimental to society. So in those cases, people like that actually want to learn how to care more, right? So again, there is no black and white answer, because we are people who are adult individuals who have our own lives, who also exist within a context of a society and a context of a larger humanity and a context of an earth and a context of the way that we live has an impact on more than just ourselves. So there is no one answer to this question. And if we were to give a should we not care answer, of course the answer is no. We shouldn't get to a place where we absolutely don't care. But the degree to which we care and how we care and the journey that we're all going to go on in order to find that healthy balance is going to be different for all of us. Okay, so in order to get this conversation going, I first want to acknowledge and sort of unpack and look at why we care about what other people think about us, right? When we're talking a lot of the time about caring about what other people think of us, especially in the context of the self-love path and our personal growth journey and our our individual lived experience that we're having as human beings on this planet. A lot of the time people are coming with this question because they are living in a place, they are operating from a place where they care a lot about what other people think about them, to the degree that it's actually hindering their life experience, and where they feel, like I said, disconnected from themselves, disconnected from real reality. And there's this kind of constant fear of people not liking us, of people not approving of us, of people thinking that what we're doing is wrong and bad, of not being loved, of not being approved of. And within that, yes, there is a tendency to lose our footing in our lives, to feel like we're constantly doing everything wrong, to feel like we're never doing what we should be doing, to feel like no matter how much we achieve or no matter how much we grow or no matter where we get in life, it's never enough, it's never good enough. And where we can feel like we don't, like I say, have that sense of an inner guidance or an inner knowing or awareness that if no one was around to tell us what to be doing, that we would know what to do. Or we're in a place where even when we do feel like we know what we want to do or what would be right for us or what would feel good for us, if someone around us disapproves, if someone around us says, no, that's not right, you shouldn't be doing that, we completely doubt ourselves. We have a really hard time going with our own intuition, going with our own feeling, going with what we know to be true, living in alignment with our own values. If someone comes up to us and says, well, I disagree with that, or I don't like that, or I don't think that's okay, we can be the kind of people that you put something out on social media and you get 10 positive comments, but the only thing that you focus on is the negative comment. And so what we really mean when we're saying, like, I care too much what people think about me, what we're really saying is that it's hindering my ability to live my life. It's hindering my ability to feel confident in my own choices, to feel confident in my own self, and it's hindering my capacity to live my life in a way that feels meaningful and valuable to me. And maybe even it's hindering my capacity to figure out what my values even are, like what I even actually care about, if people weren't around to tell me what the right thing was or what the wrong thing was. And when we look at that, right, a lot of the time the self-help, spirituality, personal growth world will say, right, like, you're weak, you need to like change, you need to stop caring what people think about you, you need to just own your value, you need to own your worth, you need to just stop doing that. And for a lot of us, it's like, yeah, that would be great, I would love to stop doing that. Like, a lot of us beat ourselves up, right? Because we already have so much shame and blame and guilt associated with how dependent we seem to be on the opinions and the thoughts of everyone around us, and how we hate the fact, right? A lot of us really hate that fact that we don't know who we are and that we don't know what we want, and that at the end of the day we kind of feel like when we go to bed there's no one inside to even check in with, like, there isn't a me there. I'm just floating around looking for someone to tell me what to do and what to be and what to think, and the second I hear a dissenting opinion, I completely collapse with my own kind of view of things. And we need to understand where that comes from, right? Like, we need to start, as always, right? If you're in my mystery school, you know the first step in understanding why we live in a way that we live, in understanding why we do a thing that we do, in understanding why we have a habit that is the habits that we have, is we must start with that compassion for ourselves, that we have a good reason that we're doing what we're doing, that we're not just weak, we're not just lazy, we're not just codependent, we're not just whatever it is that we are, right? We have a reason that we're doing what we're doing. And what we're doing is meeting a need on some level, okay? And I know this is the hardest thing for most of us to do, but it is the most important thing that we must do. Every time we are looking at a habit or a way of being that we want to change, that we don't like in ourselves, that we see as negative, is we must start with the compassion that I'm doing this for a reason. It's meeting a need on some level. And the more I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, the more I can be here for myself and be compassionate with myself, and then be curious around what the benefits of this are, what I really want and what I'm really needing from this, where this came from. The more we can start to understand how to meet our needs in new and different ways. Because that is actually how we grow and change. We don't become not something. We don't just become people who stop caring what other people think about us. That's never going to be the path that we take. We don't go from being completely dependent upon the approval and opinions of other people to just not caring. That's not how this is going to work. Rather, we're going to understand what need the caring is getting met. We're going to understand where we learned these habits of needing to care so much about what other people think about us, where we learned how to kind of abandon our own voice or to just never find it in the first place. And we're going to grow these parts of ourselves. We're going to grow our capacity to be able to have confidence in ourselves. and to make our own choices and to go our own way, even when other people don't understand and don't approve of us. And again, we're going to understand the healthy balance of where caring about what other people think is beneficial and where it isn't. And we're going to replace the old behavior of caring where we don't need to with new behavior of learning how to find what we should be doing and what we want to be doing in a new and different way. Okay? So this is all about building skills and building new awareness and building new strategies that are meeting the same needs as caring about what everyone thinks about us in a better, healthier way. That is what the whole self-love path is. That is what the whole mystery school is all about. It's about teaching you how to identify what you are getting out of your current ways of being. It's about teaching you how to understand why you're doing what you're doing currently so that you can build new tools and new strategies to get those same needs met in a better, healthier, more constructive way. So when we are looking at that kind of like extreme, I don't feel like I have an inner sense of myself. I feel like even if I know what I want to be doing or what I value, that the second someone tells me it's wrong or that they disagree or that they have a different opinion, I crumble and I don't know how to make a decision and I don't know how to stand up for myself and I don't know how to. We need to first understand, okay, so where did this first come from and start? And for all of us, again, remembering, when we were in that temporary codependent relationship with our caregivers, in the very beginning of our lives, where we were learning how life worked, the approval of our caregivers, the approval of the people who were responsible for meeting all of our needs for us, was how we got our needs met. Okay? So we are not people who are deeply dependent upon the love, approval, and acceptance of people around us, simply because we don't have enough self-love and we don't care about ourselves and we're not strong enough, and that's the problem. That is not the problem. This is actually how we learn to love ourselves. Okay, we need to think of it this way. In the temporary codependent reality of our childhoods, where we were fully and completely dependent upon our caregivers to meet all of our needs, the most self-loving thing we could do was to try to shape ourselves to be what our caregivers and other authority figures wanted us to be, so that they would approve of us, they would then empathize with us, and they would meet our needs. That's how we perceived it as children. Okay? We learned how to be codependent. We learned how to be dependent upon the approval of those around us. We learned how to augment our behavior so that we would be approved of by those around us. Because in our childhoods, it appeared to us like that was the one way to get our needs met. That was the one way to be safe. So we all learned that depending on the approval of others and being what other people wanted us to be and outsourcing what's the right answer, what am I supposed to be doing, how do I live a good life, to the people and the opinions around us. We learned that that was the best thing to do because for a temporary period of time in our lives, it was. For anyone who was the kind of person who couldn't augment themselves to be what their caregivers wanted them to be. For anyone out there who was the black sheep of the family, the scapegoat of the family, the one who couldn't just go with the flow. In a family where the dynamics were unhealthy and the caregivers were not able to show up for you and adjust themselves to match you, but you became the scapegoat, you became the black sheep. you know that it didn't feel good and it didn't feel safe to be constantly rejected, to be constantly told you were wrong, to be constantly told you were bad, to be constantly told that you don't fit in, you're not doing the right thing. In childhood, to go with what was true to you, when it was at the expense of the opinion around you, didn't feel good, didn't feel safe, didn't feel rewarding. For most of us, it was like you probably wished with every fiber of your being you could just frickin' conform so that the pain would end. Right? In the beginning of our lives, going with the flow, no matter how dysfunctional and unhealthy and not good that flow was still going to give you better results in terms of safety and provision than standing up for yourself and going your own way and being a unique individual when that just led to getting yelled at, getting rejected, getting your needs not met, being antagonized. You see? Having your own compass in the beginning of your life that went against what everyone else approved of was incredibly painful. Right? So maybe you had a sibling who was like that. And then you learned that, like, by going along with things and being the good kid, your life was way better. Your life was way easier. Like, yeah, you were abandoning yourself, and yeah, you weren't doing what you wanted to be doing. But ultimately, that gave you a better experience. Right? So the degree to which we experienced that who we really were and what we really wanted to do and what was really true for us was different than the family code and what we needed to do and what we needed to be in order to be approved of in our families and in order to be safe, is the degree to which we were either going to have to divorce ourselves from ourselves to learn to not have that inner compass, to learn to not listen to our inner voice, to learn that the opinions of other people matter more than our own opinion in order to fit in and in order to be safe. Or it was the degree to which you had to go your own way and in that temporary codependent situation feel very unsafe and not supported and antagonized and experience extreme suffering a lot of the time. So then we grow up being the kind of people who feel deeply dependent on the opinions of everyone around us. Right? Either because we learned in our childhoods, I can't be myself. I can't trust myself. I can't do what's really true and real and right for me. Because look what happens when I don't conform. I get ostracized. I get my needs not met. I get yelled at. I get antagonized. I get ignored. I get told that I'm wrong and I'm bad. I don't get provided for. I don't feel safe. It separates me from the love of my caregivers, which is the thing I am dependent upon for everything. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying here? If we grew up in a situation where being true to ourselves and listening to ourselves and going with what was really true for us got us rejected and antagonized, we were going to learn how to either abandon that as much as possible, or we were going to learn to hate those parts of ourselves if we weren't able to conform, because they were the parts of ourselves that got us abandoned and rejected and antagonized. So we need to look back and think, how safe was it for me to be myself in my childhood? How much did I learn that I had to abandon myself in order to fit in? How much was I safe to be who I really was, who I really am, to express my true needs, to express my true desires? And how unsafe was I? Because again, we're going to notice it's different for everyone when we get into adulthood. People who were generally supported in their natural expression tend to have natural self-confidence, right? They just seem naturally confident. They just seem naturally like the world is a safe place for them, and they have an easier time letting people's comments roll off their back. Because they've learned that they can be themselves and they can do what they're doing, and the world will adapt and the world will adjust and they will be okay. They had that experience. For people who really learned in their experience that being myself gets me antagonized, being myself gets me rejected, being myself leads to pain, we're going to have a way different relationship with the opinions of others. You see what I'm saying? And then the degree to which we grew up in cultures where we were maybe in high control religions, or we were in some other kind of like fundamentalist, this is the right way to live, you need to do this right thing, these are the moral values that you must carry. The more, again, we would usually have had to abandon ourselves, and we wouldn't have been taught how to properly problem solve. We wouldn't have been taught how to actually look at what's truly happening in our actual reality, how to assess what is and isn't working, how to figure out what the root cause of our problems are, and how to shift and change. Rather, we were handed a rule book, and that rule book says, this is what you have to do every time. This is what being a good person is. This is what gets you love and approval and acceptance, and these are the right things to do. And therefore, again, we're going to be disconnected from our inner guidance, from our ability to problem solve, from real reality. Because now we're trained to just follow a book, or to follow these rules, or follow these principles, whether they work in real reality or not. Yes? And thus we're not going to have like that inner guidance, that inner compass, that capacity to say, okay, well, is what I'm doing working? Is it actually giving me the results that I want in life? We're going to be very, very focused on morality and fitting into the group, and thinking that that is what's going to give us what we want and what we need, which is safety, provision, getting what we want, and getting away from what we don't want. Right? We're going to be dependent on those external opinions and external validation and approval, and this is how you should live your life. Because we were trained to be dependent on that. We were trained not to think for ourselves. We were trained not to listen to our inner guidance and inner wisdom. And in a lot of ways, we were trained against that. Right? Many of us were taught that our flesh is evil, that what we want to do is wrong, that anything that feels real and right and true to us is sinful and harmful and something that will lead us down the wrong path, right? So if it feels good to us, we start to get our pain-pleasure wires crossed. It feels good to us, but we're being told that it's wrong, so we learn to reject it. And then things that don't feel good to us, we're being told are right and true and what we have to do, and so we learn to do things that feel terrible, and then we live these lives that feel awful, and we feel disconnected from ourselves. But then when we try to connect to ourselves, right, there's this constant, well, that's probably wrong. What feels good to me is wrong. What feels bad to me is right. Because this is what I was taught. And then we wonder why we feel completely dependent upon the opinions of others. Because when we go into our own guidance, we can't trust it. We've been told we can't trust it. We've been told it's not trustworthy. So then what's the only option we have? Outsource. care about what other people think. And then that gets us into trouble because we live in a very complex world where there's no one opinion on what the right thing to do is or what the wrong thing to do is. Yeah, the virtue paradox, exactly. And there's so many different views of what a good person is that we can feel like we're being collapsed in on all the time. With, well, okay, I do this and these people approve of that, but then this person thinks it's bad, so oh my God, maybe I shouldn't be doing it, but then I should do this and then I should do that and I should do this and I should do that. And then again, right, we end up in this place where we feel like no matter what we're doing in our lives, no matter what we're achieving, no matter what we're accomplishing, we can always find someone who disagrees and disapproves and thinks that we're a bad person, and it crushes us. Or we look at our lives and we just constantly feel like it's not right, it's not what we should be doing. We don't know what we should be doing. We don't actually have a clear view of what the right thing is or how it all should look. We just have this constant awareness that it's not right, that we shouldn't be doing it, that whatever we're doing is never enough, that whatever we're doing is never good enough. And this will be then part of a very messy complex, because part of the reason we feel shitty in our lives is usually because we have been so disconnected from our inner truth and what would feel good for us and learning how to live a life in alignment with that, that our real life doesn't actually feel good to us. That when we just isolate and just say, okay, if I got 100% approval, if I were to get to a place where just everyone loved me and this was perfect and I was told that I was perfect and I was guaranteed approval for the whole rest of my life, I still wouldn't like my life. Because this isn't the life I want to be living. We can have that revelation because, again, we never learned to build a life that actually felt good for us. We learned to build our life based on what everyone was saying and everyone was thinking. And we don't know what we want and we don't know what feels good to us because that has been so obfuscated. And at the same time, we can live this life where even when we're getting approval, and even when we're getting love, and even when people are saying it's good enough, it doesn't feel satisfying. And we constantly feel like, well, there must be more, there must be more, there must be more. And we keep searching for that approval, and we keep searching for more, the right person to approve of us, or the right thing, or it's the next accomplishment, or it'll be the next time, because we're not realizing that it's the life itself that doesn't feel good, because it's the life itself that isn't in alignment with our true values, because we aren't connected to our true values on our own. And then on the other side, right, it can feel like even when we go our own way and even when we do our own thing, we just like constantly feel super insecure about it. And we don't feel good about it, and we don't feel sure, and we don't feel confident, and we don't feel good in it, even though we think we're doing what we want to be doing. Because there's that constant fear of like, but what if people don't like it? And what if I get rejected? And what if I get hurt? And what if I get judged? And it's just this constant like, but people don't like it and people don't approve of me. And so we're doing what we want to be doing, but we're hating ourselves the whole time. Okay, so I think this is why some experience a feeling of existential dread. It's the pervasive feeling of dread whose source we can't pinpoint. Yeah, right? Like this is why we talk about this so much on this channel and in the mystery school, that this existential dread of am I doing the right thing? It comes first from never having learned what the right thing is. Like what actually brings us a feeling of peace, and like if I were to die today, I would be satisfied with what I did with my life. Right? Because we've learned to outsource what we should be doing and what would be good Or we are so deeply convinced in our bodies and our nervous systems that approval from the outside is the thing we want. Because we haven't learned to step into the adult perspective that tells us that even if we get disapproved of, we can still be safe, we can still get our needs met, we can still be okay. So this is the first thing first. We have to have compassion for the fact that when we feel deeply, deeply dependent upon the approval of others to feel like we're okay, we're operating from the childhood perspective that says the only way to be safe, the only way to get my needs met, the only way to be happy is to be approved of by those around me so that they will understand me and they will meet my needs. That's what we subconsciously, so we're not thinking it consciously, that's the subconscious program we were all handed as children. In order to be safe, in order to be provided for, in order to get your needs met, you need to be understood, loved, valued, and approved of by those around you. That is how we get safety. That is how we get provision. Because we couldn't provide for ourselves, we didn't understand. So when we learned that who and what we are in real truth doesn't get those things, we're going to abandon ourselves a lot. We're not going to be connected to our values. We're going to build lives that don't align with what we actually want or what we actually need. So we're going to feel empty and unsatisfied and not good because of that. But there's going to be that constant, I can't go with what is right for me. I can't listen to myself. I can't do what I would want to do. I can't even connect with those parts of myself. Because the way to be safe and the way to get my needs met is to be approved of. So I'm so focused on what other people think about me, what other people think is right and wrong, what other people think is true. I'm doing that because I think that's the only way I'm going to survive and be safe and get my needs met. That's why we do it. It's not because we don't love ourselves. It's not because we don't care about ourselves. It's because we learned that the only way to be safe and the way to figure out what's right and wrong in this complex reality where everything is confusing all the time is to look for someone outside of you to tell you what to do, to get approval. That's why we do it. Okay? And again, the less we were approved of for who and what we really were, the more we had to abandon ourselves in order to be loved and approved of, the more disconnected we're going to feel from our lives, the more dissatisfied we're going to feel in our lives, the more everything's going to feel shitty no matter if we're following what's true for us or we're not following what's true for us. Both are going to feel shitty. Because when we are following what's true for us, if it goes against what gets us loved and valued and approved of by others, that's going to feel like an existential threat. We're constantly going to feel that existential dread that I'm going to be disapproved of and therefore I'm not going to be safe and I'm not going to get my needs met. And again, we're not thinking it consciously. This is why I say this like in every way. This is why the mystery school is so long, because none of us walk around with this awareness. Right? We just walk around knowing it feels shitty to do the thing that I want to do. We don't know why. We don't understand where that's coming from. We think we're just weak and we have weak will and we're just codependent. When really it's, no, that's your nervous system that learned in your childhood the way to be safe is to fit in. So when you go and do anything that's out of alignment with what you were taught to do, even if it's the most aligned thing with your true self and your true values, it's not going to feel good and it's not going to feel right. Your nervous system is going to freak out and it's going to be like, no, don't do that. It's going to get you rejected. And if you're rejected, you'll die. And then when you do what's in alignment with what other people want and what other people agree with. It's going to feel good to a degree to be approved of. It sounds like conditioning, not a character flaw. Aha! Ding, ding, ding. Exactly. You do not have a character flaw. You are doing what you were conditioned to do to be safe. This is why the self-love path says there is no bad part of you. The more you understand yourself, the more you're going to see literally everything you're doing is to try to keep yourself alive and safe. Right? So then you go and do what gets you approved of, and there might be an element of pleasure to it, but the degree to which that's out of alignment with what's true for you in real reality, because real reality doesn't go away when we conform to consensus reality. Real reality does not disappear. Real consequences of our actions do not get erased because people approve of us. Right? If everyone around you said, well, my self-esteem just went up 100 points. Exactly. This is why I make these videos every single week. Because, right, that shame and that guilt, that like, no, there's something wrong with me. Right? I say every single time, there's nothing wrong with you. There's no bad part of you. You are not the exception. But everyone thinks they're the exception. Everyone thinks there's some bad part of themselves. Again, this is why the mystery school is a 4-year course. Because to like actually break through these shame barriers is so hard. Because we don't even recognize that that shame is there or that we're making ourselves the exception. You are not the exception. There is no bad part of you. If you are deeply codependent and dependent upon the love and approval of others, you are not flawed. You are doing the best you know to do to keep yourself alive and safe. You learned that you needed to do this. Period, end of story, every single time. It's not because you don't love yourself. It's not because you don't care about yourself. It's not because you don't have a spine. It's because you learned. This is how you get your needs met. This is how you stay safe. Period. So like I said, now I'm trying to get to this point. So you do what people approve of you for. It's still going to feel empty. Because again, if everyone says, best thing to do, jump off a cliff, you're going to fly. If you jump off this cliff, you're going to fly. We all agree, every single one of us, we all have scientific studies to prove that it's true. You go jump off a cliff, you are not going to fly. You are going to fall. You did what gets you approved of. You jumped off the cliff. You went in alignment with consensus reality. You did what everyone says is the right thing. It doesn't erase reality. Reality will always win. So if doing what gets you approved of isn't in alignment with real reality, there's going to be pain. If it's not in alignment with who you really are, if it doesn't actually get your needs met, if it's not the real right thing, doesn't matter how much everyone agrees that it is. You will have pain and suffering. So then that's why we walk through our lives feeling that existential dread 24/7. I feel shitty when I go along with what's right for me. I feel shitty when I go along with what's right for other people. Neither thing feels good. And I feel lost all the time. So what do we do about it? How do we start to figure out where we should care about what other people think? How do we start to figure out where we shouldn't? Again, first things first, we have to start with compassion for ourselves. Compassion for ourselves and curiosity around how did we get separated from our ability to determine what real reality is, to feel out things for ourselves, and where did we, again, not make that transition from the childhood perspective that says the best thing I can do for my survival is to go along with what other people think is the right thing to do so that I will be loved and approved of and then provided for when I cannot provide for myself. Into the adult perspective that says, okay, now as an adult, I can be disapproved of. I can go my own way. I can make mistakes and fall on my face and do things that other people don't like and still be safe and still get my needs met and still provide for myself and still be okay. We want to start to look for the real evidence of where we can be disapproved of and still be okay. So this starts to become where we need to do nervous system work, because you're not going to think your way out of this. You're not going to convince yourself I can be rejected and be okay. Your body is going to have to learn through experience. So this is when we start to take little steps. So again, right, we're starting with first just compassion and curiosity. And a lot of the time, this leads into needing to grieve the childhoods we had, where we were taught to abandon ourselves, needing to grieve where we weren't supported, where we weren't loved, where we were antagonized. We need to process that. We need to get angry at our caregivers. We need to move through these layers of shame so that we can start to realize we don't have bad parts and we're not actually evil and we're not actually horrible. And learning to unpack and understand where we learned that we're bad and we're wrong and we're not okay, right? So we go through therapy, we can go through the mystery school, you can get one-on-one coaching with me, you can get one-on-one coaching with any other kind of trauma-informed places. You can read Complex PTSD by Pete Walker. There are so many tools to help us start to work through our shame and our blame and our guilt. And that's where we're going to start. Okay, we're going to start with having compassion for ourselves. We're not going to start with learning how to stand on our own 2 feet and do what feels right for us. That's not the first step, right? The first step is compassion and grieving where we were not supported and processing whatever our process needs to be in whatever ways we can. The pain of having been separated from ourselves and never being able to transition into that adult perspective. That's the first phase. And I think this is part of the reason why a lot of people never actually get there. Because we're just trying to jump to, okay, well, how do I listen to my inner compass? Well, you have all this programming that tells you not to. That you're going to have to work through first. You have all this programming that's looking for you to be perfectly moral, otherwise you think everything is because of you, right? Like when we are living in the law of attraction, bad things happen to me because I keep making mistakes, and we're so afraid that we're not doing everything perfect. That's a childhood perspective. That's the childhood view of the only reason bad things happen to me is because I'm being punished for doing the wrong thing. Because that's how it would have appeared to us as children. So we have to process that, right? We're not going to just jump into confidence. We have to process that childhood perspective. That's the first step. So like I said, there's lots of tools to help you do that. So much self-blame. That's what we learned, right? Like, again, blame and shame are always lies. That's the childhood perspective that says the only reason I am in pain is because I did something wrong. Because from the childhood perspective, caregivers had access to everything. They were God. They were all-knowing, all-capable beings of light who the only reason they wouldn't meet our needs, the only reason they wouldn't provide for us and keep us safe was because we did something wrong. That's what we perceived. It was our behavior that caused their reaction to us every time. And then we take that into our adulthood and we project it out onto the universe, the law of attraction. I'm the reason this person was mean to me. I'm the reason this, I'm the reason that. And then our ultra individualist culture comes in and keeps saying, yep, right, take more responsibility for yourself. Everything that happens to you is because of you. And we want to believe that. We want to believe that everything is because of us, because then that means if I perfect myself, I will have the perfect life. We're not seeing that that is a childhood perspective. That this is not a spiritual teaching. This is not a wise understanding. This is not a key to the universe. This is a childhood projection. That everything is because of me, and if I want a good life, I have to fix myself to make myself perfect. And so who am I supposed to be approved of in order to be perfect? You see? So we got to process that. We unpack those things. Like I said, the mystery school, whole curriculum on that. You can work with a therapist. You can work with deprogramming from New Age spirituality. Whatever calls to you to help you process these feelings of shame and blame and guilt and that there's something wrong with you. That's the first step. And then we're going to start to come into contact with our real selves. As we do this processing work and we let ourselves be mad and we let ourselves get angry at our caregivers and we let ourselves see what was wrong about what happened to us, and we process the anger and the grief, because that's what's under the shame. Shame and guilt are cover-ups for what we're really feeling. Okay? Like when we actually genuinely hurt someone, the shame and the guilt there is more, it's covering up the pain. That when we just go into like the actual feeling of what it feels like to hurt someone else is real pain. Yeah, I appreciate the deconditioning aspect of your work. That's like the main part of my work. We have to deprogram before we figure out what's true. That's what this whole self-love path is really about, the deprogramming. Because it's so hard to deprogram. So even, like I say, shame and guilt are always lies. It's covering up what's really there. Anger, resentment, sadness, how we were hurt, how we were harmed. We learn to blame ourselves, thinking if I just perfect myself, I will then be treated how I need to be treated and how I want to be treated, and this pain will go away. And we have to learn that that's not true and that's not reality. So what are we actually feeling? Right? And it's very difficult to get angry at our caregivers, and it's very difficult to get angry at society, but we need to. And to grieve all of that, and to believe that we didn't deserve it, and that it wasn't our fault. How we were treated, and how we were antagonized, and how it's not that we have bad parts, and it truly is that we suck. But we never should have been treated like that. Period. End of story. And even though our caregivers tried, and even though they were good people, they fucked up. And these two things can be true. And we need to heal the wounds. We need to admit where they failed and where they harmed us and where we were hurt. Otherwise, that hurt never gets healed. And then we stay stuck in codependency forever. So we process and we decondition and we process and we decondition. And in that, we will start to get glimpses of our true self. And then we need to start to take steps towards doing what our true self wants to do. And realizing there's going to be a slingshot effect. Realizing we are then going to be scared out of our minds. Our nervous systems are going to be like, no, you can't. This is the worst thing. Shame, guilt, blame, blah. And we have to learn how to witness that, how to do it anyways, and how to prove to our nervous system through doing what's right for us, getting rejected, and then being able to orient and see that we're still safe. We have to ground into our bodies because, right, a lot of the time we will do what we want to do and then our bodies freak out like we're dying and we literally are programming into our bodies that we almost died. So we have to learn how to witness the fear and how to actually bring our bodies online and be like, but look what's actually happening. I'm still safe. I still have a roof over my head. And we have to repeat that process over and over and over again of doing what's right for us, feeling the fear, and then being able to actually ground into what's actually happening in real reality and showing our bodies that we're okay. And that's how we eventually learn to trust it. And that's how we're eventually going to get to a place where we care less about what other people think about us. And we know when to prioritize someone's opinion who has more knowledge and more awareness than us. We know how to say, okay, your opinion doesn't actually really matter right now. And it's a process. Okay, but what I've given you in this video is this is why we're doing this. We care because, of course, we're connected. So, and again, we don't want to get to a place where we never care. There really are people, like, right, when you're in a partnership or friendships, you should care what the people around you feel about your behavior. We don't want to be completely independent and isolated and just do whatever the fuck we want. Right? We live in a community. We learn to respect the wants and the needs and prioritize the comfort and safety of those we care about and those we love. And we learn how to figure out, again, what's a healthy dynamic. So we're not self-sacrificing, but we're in a state of cooperation and community. We learn to realize how our actions are affecting the greater whole in real reality, not what people think. And that's something we should care about. And we know how to use our own inner guidance and our own compass and our own ability to figure out what's right and wrong through learning to trust real reality, actual outcomes, not what people think and say. That's a big part of it. Okay? So we have to start with the deprogramming. That's where all of this begins. And that starts with compassion and curiosity. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're not shameful, blameful, guilty, weak, there's something wrong with you. Where did you learn that it was not okay for you to trust yourself? That you had to do all these other things? And can we process the pain of that childhood perspective? That's where we start. Okay? And it's a long road. There's no easy answer and there's no easy way to get there. There's no easy way to get out of feeling like we have to be morally perfect in order to be okay. It's a long process. But it's one that gets better and better and better the more we do it. You don't have to get to the end before you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better as you walk the path, I promise. Okay? Okay. So that's today's talk. Thank you for being here. You are good enough. There is no bad part of you. You are not the exception. Shame, blame, and guilt are always lies. There's something under it. Always. And learning how to trust yourself starts with the deprogramming, which starts with compassion and curiosity. Okay? Okay. So, thank you for being here. I'll see you next week. Talk to you later.